Hi, Tony Bellamy from JustCoolin, where hip hop meets bebop and bebop meets hip hop. You know, I got a little story to tell you that I should have told you about a month and a half ago. It happened on Christmas Eve. You see, on Christmas Eve, I was shopping, looking for gifts. I was in Union Square on 18th Street. And I just so happened to be walking, and I hear music being played. And I heard it, and I said, wow, that sounds like, the kalimba. And in case you don't know what the kalimba is, it's the African piano, thumb piano, developed in Zimbabwe. I don't want to go too far with it. Over 1,300 years ago, and with the Bantu tribe. All right, so African thumb piano. Anyway, so I cross the street. I see two Asian ladies playing the kalimba as it was turned into in the 1950s called. And I said, wow, they were playing it. And this brother next to him was sitting next to him, was playing. And, they were, wow, incredible musicians with it. So I said, hey, this reminds me of Earth, Wind, and Fire, Maurice White. And he said, yeah. He said, he said, Maurice? I said, yeah. He said it like I knew him. I said, Earth, Wind, and Fire. He said, oh yeah, Maurice was taught how to play the kalimba by Phil Cochran, trumpet player and composer with Sun Ra. He taught him spirituality and how to play it along with his brother Verdine. I said, wow, I didn't know that, So anyway, he also played with Ramsey Lewis. Ramsey Lewis encouraged him to play the kalimba as well. So I said, wow, I didn't know that. This is me just crossing the street. So anyway, I listened to this, and sure enough, maybe about a year ago, I hear this music being played with the kalimba. And I ran to the radio and I said, who is this? In 1975, it was the Heath Brothers comes out with an album called Smiling Billy. No, the album was called, it was actually called Marching. They came out with a tune called Smiling Billy, written and dedicated to Billy Higgins, the drummer, who was a good friend of Jimmy Heath, who wrote this tune. And I'm just hearing Stanley Cowell played the kalimba, as you can hear it, just hear it. Yeah, okay. So I said, wow, that's, dope, So anyway, 20 years go by, and there comes, something else comes up. Jimmy Heath gets a call from Nas, and he says Nas wants to use Smiling Billy. And he calls his son Mtume. Who is this guy? Mtume, yes, of Juicy Fruit, also a trumpet and composer with Miles Davis, the Miles Davis Quintet. And he said, who is this guy? And he was kind of alarmed because he had never had anything sampled before. So Mtume, quiets him down. He says, listen, this is a good thing. He's one of the best lyricists out here right now in the rap game. So he said, matter of fact, his father, Oludaru, who's a trumpet player, plays with me. He's one of the great jazz trumpeters in the game right now. So he said, yeah, let him do this. So Jimmy Heath lets Nas take it. And also it was produced by Q-Tip of Tribe Called Quest, who actually was the guy behind going after Smiling Billy. And it sounded like this. So I want you to hear this. And this is me just crossing the street, okay, to find out all this information. JustCoolin, where hip hop meets bebop and bebop meets hip hop, and the many flavors of jazz. And needless to say, I got a gift too.